Hi everyone, my name is Richard. I work at Research and Development at Virtual Surveys. I'm really excited to spend the next 20 or so minutes talking to you about hacking the data shadow. I hope by the end of this 20 minutes you have a bunch of new ideas and inspired to try and take some of those ideas forward. Okay, so we'll talk about two sort of big concepts today, or two important words on the screen in front of us. The first one is hacking or hackers. In particular, the hacker ethic is what I'm interested in today. And when I'm talking about the hacker ethic, I mean it in a wider sense that extends beyond computer-related hackerism. When you think about hackers, you probably think about people illegally breaking into computers, people from films like war games and things like that. That's not what I mean today. When I talk about the hacker ethic, I'm talking about it as a philosophy which started in the 60s at places like MIT and values things like free access to information and decentralization. So I guess the main thing to take out of it when I'm talking about hackers and hacking is that I don't just mean computers. I'm talking about a philosophy that you can apply to all sorts of different areas. Indeed, hopefully by the end of the presentation, prove you have hackers in all walks of life, hacker carpenters, hacker teachers, or even hacker market researchers. The second concept we're going to talk about is the data shadow. And when I'm talking about the data shadow, it's this idea that as people go around their daily lives, they're creating data. So whenever we use credit cards or mobile phones, we're creating data. Whenever we eat or drink or turn on the TV or use the kettle, we're creating data. As we walk around our cities and towns and travel to and from work, to and from our homes, we're creating data. And I think there's lots of information, interesting bits of information in this data shadow that we can pick up on. We just need to figure out how to get to it. Okay, so today, let's talk to you how we're going to go through it. There's three main sections. The first section is a bit of an introduction about why I think these ideas are important. The second section is all about this idea of hacking and the hacker ethic I mentioned a bit before. And it's going to be a little bit philosophical, but I think it's really interesting, and it's important to have a strong philosophical foundation for the third bit. And in particular, I'm going to focus on how the hacker ethic relates to the way that we work. The third section, the data shadow, is this final bit. It's going to be all a bit more pragmatic, and it's going to talk about getting at all this data that people are creating. Okay, so introduction. Why do I think these ideas are important? Okay, I spent some time thinking about how we approach market research, and I don't know why. Maybe I'm a bit crazy, maybe I need a new hobby or something like that, but gut instinct tells me that we can do market research better. And this first bit is about some of the ideas I've discovered while trying to figure out how to make market research better. And like all good ideas, some of the ideas in this presentation have their flaws. And I guess within the 20 or so minutes that we've got, there's a danger I can create more questions than I give answers. But I'm going to try and do my best to give you something solid to take away at the end. Now think about, okay, if we want to make market research better, it'd be a good idea to try and figure out what the problems are with market research in the first place. After all, if you don't know what's broken, how can you fix it? So when I first started thinking about this, I started with the obvious things. Is it that we're short on time? We don't have too many deadlines and things like that. Is it that there's something wrong with our approaches or methodologies? Maybe it's a lack of resources, don't have enough people or enough money. And to an extent, these are problems, both for market research and other businesses. But that wasn't it. There's something else. And I guess after a while, the conclusion that came to me that the biggest problem facing market research is the lack of joy. Somehow we've managed to reduce vast swathes of our industry to a series of soul-destroying mechanistic processes. And I find this quite astounding because understanding people's behaviour and applying that to a business context is quite possibly one of the most fascinating jobs a person can ever wish for. Well, for me anyway. I think we have great jobs, but sometimes it can feel like a bit of a drag. But why do I care so much about people enjoying themselves and being passionate and playful and all that sort of stuff? I guess it's important to me because I think creativity is massively important, and joy and passion are the basis of creativity. And if you're not enjoying something or you're not passionate about something, you'll find it hard to be creative. In our modern information economy, for want of a better word, Creativity is our greatest asset. When I talk about creativity, I'm not just talking about an artistic context like music or painting. I'm talking about people's ability to come up with new solutions and ideas. I think creativity is important for a number of reasons. At the moment, there's lots of talk about things like DIY research and new technology. And I can see that in the not-so-distant future, a lot of the things that we currently view as market research are either going to be automated or done by someone else or different types of company. With the rise of the internet, people have much more access to information. And because there's much more information out there, the supply of information has increased, the pure economic value of information has decreased a little bit. So I guess, as researchers, the value we provide businesses can no longer be as information brokers, people who solely just sell information. Our value comes from people who can bring about creative solutions from an array of different data sources. The data we provide is, I think, is increasingly of little value in itself. The value comes from what we're able to creatively produce from that sort of information. And this argument about creativity being key to business success is a pretty key argument for the rest of the presentation. So if you think it's complete hokum, you might not enjoy the rest of it, but I hope you're open to this idea, and I encourage you to bear with me because I'm going to talk about some interesting stuff. Okay, so moving swiftly on. This next section is all about the hacker ethic that I mentioned before, and then, hacker ethic is a philosophy that can cover a range of different things. But what we're going to focus on specifically today is the relationship between the hacker ethic and the way we work, our current work ethic. Now, you may not agree with some of the ideas in this section. That's fine. I'm not sure that I agree with all of them, 100%. But I think the Festival of NewMR is all about having new ideas, new challenging ideas that make us think. So I guess all I can say is, just take the bits from this section that you think work for you. Okay, so to understand what the hacker ethic is all about, I think it's useful to look at the way that we currently work. And there's a school of thought which suggests that the way we work today is largely based on the thoughts of a handful of thinkers from the start of the 20th century. So people like Max Weber talking about the idea of the Protestant work ethic, Frederick Taylor and his experiments and principles of scientific management, Skinner and his ideas on radical behaviorism. Now, I'm not saying that we follow these principles dogmatically today, but I do think they have quite a considerable hold over the way we work. We often do things like look to optimize people's time as much as possible with planners and targets and deadlines. We give people cash bonuses because we believe that it's going to motivate them to work harder. We often still treat work as a duty, something that simply must be done just because it needs to be done and nothing else. And whilst this sort of approach and thinking works well for some businesses, I think there's some problems when you apply it to market research. For instance, the optimization of people's time can often lead to us thinking too short term. People are simply trying to meet their next deadline or their next target or get through the next conference call rather than thinking further ahead. Things like bonuses don't always do a great job of motivating people. Dan Pink in a book called Drive does a great job of writing about this sort of stuff. It's definitely worth checking out. Obviously not now though. Listen to me for a little bit longer. Also, thinking about our current working practice and the way we work, I often think they stifle the passion and creativity and joy, which I was talking about before, which I think are key to our success in the future. So what's the alternative, I guess, if there's a few problems with the way we approach work at the moment? Well, one alternative is this idea of the hacker ethic. And when talking about the hacker ethic in his book, surprisingly called The Hacker Ethic, Pika Hinman divides the hacker ethic into three key parts, passion, money, and time. So what we're going to do now is just quickly go through each of those three sections and see how they relate to our current way of working. Okay, so first up, we've got passion. When hackers talk about passion, they mean that they don't do what they do merely out of a sense of duty to work, but or do something just because they think it will make them rich. They do things because they're passionate about something. And I think we can be passionate about market research. After all, market research is an intrinsically interesting job to have. I guess, ask yourself this, is market research a craft work, all the passion, intelligence, creativity that you can muster? And if market research isn't something that you're passionate about, it doesn't interest you, that's fine. But Yeah, I would think you do want to spend 40, 50, 60 hours a week doing something that you can't truly get excited about. Related to this emphasis on passion, hackers are curious and want to learn more. I once heard that being a hacker can be a lot of fun, but it's the kind of fun which entails a lot of hard work. Malcolm Gladwell in his book Outliers and Dan Pinker, we mentioned before, talk about this idea of mastery and its relation to passion. So if people are passionate about stuff and interested, they'll want to be the best they can be at it, and ultimately that leads to better work. Right, moving on to the second sort of key pillar of the hacker ethic, this idea of money. So based on the last slide and what I've talked about so far, you might think this whole hacker ethic concept is some type of paradisical utopianism, that money isn't important to this way of thinking. Well, it is. Money is important. If we don't have enough money to survive, or people don't get the wage that they consider fair, they won't be happy. What the hacker ethic does say, though, it talks about the place that money is accorded as a motivation to work. Hackers place an equal or greater emphasis on passionate action and the freedom to organise your own time. The problem is that if a person or business regards money as the highest goal, then work that they do is of no value in itself. It's just merely a means to an end. And if the work is of no value in itself, it's impossible to be passionate about it, going back to that idea again. And if you're not passionate about it, then the quality of the work suffers. Okay, so that's the third bit, time. And I guess time is money. Pretty much sums up our current relationship between work and time. Hackers would argue that the amount of passion and creativity you put into something is a greater determinator of its success than the amount of time you spend doing it. The problem is that the printing press, the light bulb, the personal computer, the internet, even this presentation were not created between the hours of 9 to 5 on a Monday to Friday. I don't think it's possible to create something interesting if you're in a constant hurry or if your time is massively regulated. So even for purely economic reasons, I think we should allow for individual work rhythms and playfulness and really look to incite creativity in what we do. Hackers say that people should be able to determine their own use of time as much as possible. So people like Dan Pinker, we've mentioned a couple of times before, talk about the results-oriented work environment used at companies like Best Buy. Now, this is the idea that people don't have schedules, they don't have to be in the office at a certain time, they just have to get their work done. And we see this kind of idea repeat itself in things like agile project management. So agile project management methodologies like Scrum talk about a similar thing, this idea of letting people complete their work in any way they see fit, as long as they get to the goal that they're trying to get to. Okay, so that was the heavy sort of philosophical bit about the hacker ethic, and I hope that you found that bit quite interesting. This third section is all about the idea of data shadow, so the idea that people simply create data as they go about their day-to-day lives, and how we can apply this sort of thinking about the way we work and the hacker ethic with this idea of the data shadow to try and do some interesting bits of research. Okay. So how did we get to this idea of the hacker ethic to the data shadow? How they really sort of mesh together? Well, for me, the hacker ethic provides us with an underlying philosophy that promotes things like passionate action, the self-determined use of time, questions the role of money as a motivator and the different motivators we have. Now, once we have this philosophy, we can try and start translating it into practical principles in terms of how we approach research projects. So we can start to think about, okay, when we're approaching research projects, we should look to encourage playfulness and experimentation, which helps people think creatively. We can focus on individual interactions over processes and tools, which allow for individual motivators beyond just trying to pay people money to do stuff. We can do research in, think of it doing it small iterative steps rather than big, long chunks with lots of different objectives. By doing research in small steps, it gives us more flexibility, which allows people to have more control over their manage their time. So with this underlying philosophy in place, we're able to use these new techniques and principles to get at the data contained within this data shadow I've been barking on about. And I guess one thing to think about as well, these ideas, the one of the hacker ethic and the data shadow, aren't mutually exclusive. They can be talked about as two completely separate ideas. They don't have to go together. But I think by combining them both, we can come up with some really interesting solutions to research problems. Okay, so once I've come up with all this philosophy and this approach, this idea, the data shadow and all that sort of stuff, I thought, well, I'd best give it a go and see what I can do with it. So I decided to just for the hell of it, do a little research project on drinking habits. I don't know why. I guess it's just one of those things that had both commercial and social application. And I was going to try and run this project using the principles we mentioned before. So being playful and experimenting with the approach, different sort of approaches to the research problem, not worrying too much about processes or using certain tools, but also doing it small iterative steps, which allowed me greater control over my time, but also allowed me to respond to change and new information as I discovered it. Okay, so the first thing I did, my first little iterative step, my first hack, was really complicated. I figured if people are wandering around creating all this data, some of this data must end up in some form on Google. Google's got lots of information. So I searched Google with the intention of trying to discover what people are drinking, what are the current drinking habits and trends. Then embracing this idea of the hacker ethics, I didn't just try typing in drinking habits and leave it at that. I spent some time using the advanced search and experimenting with Google, playing around with it, trying to figure out all its secrets. And quite quickly, I started to find some useful information. So I managed to dig out some industry reports quite quickly and found out things like gin is really cool. Everyone's drinking more gin. Well, not everyone, but people are drinking more gin. Vodka, not cool. People are drinking less vodka. And after a bit more searching, I stumbled upon some raw sales data, which again is pretty interesting. Showed us that beer is slowly decreasing whilst other categories are increasing a bit over time. Now, none of this is brain-breaking stuff, but after sort of half an hour of desk research and playing around with the tools out there, I was able to find some pretty interesting information. Now, I thought Google was good, and it was a nice sort of interesting, easy start. But I think there's more I could do with playing around with the hacker ethic and learning more about drinking habits. So what I want to do is go a little bit further and try and embrace these principles I talked about before. So feeling particularly creative and hacky, for my second iterative step or little hack, I decided to create an iPhone app that could directly collect drinking data. I decided I wanted an iPhone app because it enabled me to capture data at the time people are taking part in the behavior I wanted to measure. After all, if you're talking about drinking habits, if you do a survey 2 months or 2 weeks later, people might forget what they've been doing. So the iPhone app allowed me to collect what people are drinking, who they're drinking with, some geolocated data, so where they were, what bars and pubs and places they were drinking, and also at what time. So I managed to get quite a rich sort of data set relatively quickly. Okay, the final and third sort of iterative step and hack I did while playing around and having fun really with this whole idea of trying to discover people's drinking habits, was this whole idea of open data. Now this one's a bit of a work in progress. I find things really interesting. At the moment, there's quite a trend for people to put lots of data online, which is increasingly tempered by this idea of online privacy. But there's some really interesting sites out there, like this one called Swipely. Now, Swipely is both fascinating and terrifying in equal amounts. What the guys over at Swipely are trying to do is turn purchases into conversations. So their website connects directly to your bank account, and you can choose to share whatever purchase data you like with the rest of the world. So if I was to buy something on my card, I can share it with everyone else. Now, as market researchers, or even marketers in general, if people are willing to share that data with us, and we could then connect it to other data, for instance, stuff like the iPhone, a survey app, and things like that, we could do some really fascinating and interesting things. So scary, but ultimately very cool. Okay, so you've heard me ramble on for a little while now, and we've talked about a range of different things, starting off with the hacker ethic and this idea of creativity and passionate action, that the self-determined use of time is beneficial because it allows that creativity to come through, and also questioning the place that money and there's additional sort of motivators that we have in work, what sort of role are they likely to play in the future. We then moved on to talk about the data shadow and collecting this naturally occurring data that people are doing is to just go about doing stuff, like going to the pub or whatever, and think about how we can apply all these concepts to research projects. So hopefully I've come up, given you a few interesting ideas, and I'm sure you've got plenty of questions. That's all from me. Thank you very much.